Today we're talking about Grok. Jaden and I just came out of a conversation. Guys, Grok is something. Don't sleep on Grok. Grok is like I was just driving by, Jaden. I didn't tell you this, but like I drove by a Tesla today that's had a bumper sticker that said something like the "We Hate Elon Tesla Club" or something like that. So just as we were coming online, Jaden was like, I was like, yeah, I'm using Grok all the time. And we're like, we should talk about Grok. And Jaden's like, you've come to the dark side? And I'm like, well, it's dark side-ish. It's dark side. I don't know if it's dark side. Here's the thing about Grok. Elon aside, okay? Like, look, let's separate the art from the artist here. But I really want to get into Jaden has been really early on Grok, I feel like. But I got to tell you, I am using it more and more for a few very specific reasons, which I absolutely love. By the way, just as I pass over to Jaden, just because we always say this at the end, actually don't know is I want to just kind of give a shout out, guys. If you've left a rating review, we're so grateful. If you haven't, would you mind maybe making today the day that you leave a rating and review? We love doing this, we absolutely love it, but it really just warms our heart when like a new rating or review pops up. It's huge for how we get guests, it's huge for keeping us going, everything else. So that's just my little in sort of like monologue plug. Okay, over to Jaden. Jaden is the Grok master. Jaden, talk to me. Why are you so obsessed with Grok?
All right, I'll share my screen with this, and I'll show you a bunch of new features that they've dropped. Honestly, one of the big things I've been very impressed with Grok is that they are late to the party. This is a company that's coming, launched like a year and a half, almost 2 years after ChatGPT. So they definitely were way behind. But they did have a very cracked team from the beginning that kind of moved over. A lot of people that kind of were early OpenAI people moved over and were kind of helping XAI get started and launch. They did raise a lot of money. So obviously this helps. Actually, I think this helps tremendously. At the same time, sometimes I feel like companies that raise a lot of money still aren't always number one. You could look at Inflection Pi that early on raised $1 billion. And I hate to say like they weren't able to execute. They made an interesting product, but they were kind of, they didn't go maybe as big or fast as they hoped. The team got acqui-hired by Microsoft, and it kind of turned into kind of a different enterprise tool. So it's just not the big thing that it could have been. It could have been one of these big players like Anthropic's Claude or something else. So in any case, did not have this fate. And I thought maybe it would. There's a couple different reasons that maybe I think it has been successful. And I honestly, like you've mentioned, I've been using Grok kind of early on, but I myself am shocked by how good it is. And I will also say, I actually wouldn't use it if it wasn't good. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, I want to try this model because maybe it's cool for like X, Y, and Z reasons. And I'll be like, so one of the big reasons why I started using Grok or trying it out at the first place was kind of this promise that it was this like uncensored AI. It wasn't going to like babysit me. I kind of hate when I ask ChatGPT or any other model a question about something and it's like, we can't give you that answer because it could be whatever for like whatever reason. I'm just like, come on, like that's just annoying, right? And like I'm asking it all these offensive things. And honestly, what I think bothers me the most is like when I don't think this is any sort of controversial topic, and then it still's like, well, we can't tell you about that. I'm like, come on, like so that just like irks me. Whatever. So that's why I tried Grok to begin with. I've stuck because it actually Grok 3 is shockingly good results. And I think it's number one has to do with how much money they've been able to throw at GPUs and training. They pioneered a very innovative training cluster, which could have been like, people could say like, oh, that sounds like hype. It turns out it actually was real. Like it actually made the results very, very good. They were able to chain together 200,000 GPUs. They did it in a very, you could say haphazardous way. Like they just had thousands of like diesel generators running like a pop-up factory that they made because they didn't have enough power on the grid. They like built these like storage containers and stuck them together on the edge of like something. Like they went, oh, they purchased, I think like 70% of all America's rentable cooling systems. They rented them all out and shipped them to like this one. It's just like they did like crazy things that you'd be like, can you do that? It's like, I guess you can. Like, I guess you don't have to spend a year to build a data center. You could do it in 3 months if you kind of do these crazy things. So they did a lot of that. And I think consequently, they were able to accelerate the training and try to catch up, right? This isn't a company that's like, how do they stay ahead? They're like, we're going to die unless we do something drastic. So they did something drastic. And I think they were able to catch up on quality. But yeah, I'd be curious, Connor, like, so for me, it was kind of like ideological, and then it went to like, oh, dang, this thing's good, so I stuck. If it wasn't good, I would be back on ChatGPT, I'm not going to lie. And I do use it all the time whenever a new feature tool comes out. I hop over there until Grok catches up in some way, like the memory feature. I've been using ChatGPT for the last week because the memory feature was so good. Grok just dropped it yesterday. Probably for text generation, I'll be back on Grok now with that. I'd be curious from your perspective, Connor, what brought you over to the dark side? I know you and Elon aren't, always the best of friends. So what convinced you to use Grok?
Yeah, it just like won me over. It's so funny, like the evolution of Grok. If you guys think back for a minute, do you remember what Grok was in the beginning? Jaden, you were kind of referencing this, but it was like, we're going to be politically correct. Like it's sort of like what you're talking about, where it was like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of intriguing, right? But it was sort of not, I don't want to say dumb. In fact, I really thought there was something to it at first, because I was thinking like, look, that's probably not for me, because I'm not the biggest Elon fan in the history of the world, but I will say that this idea that everybody could sort of have an LLM, like, or a chatbot that at least directionally aligned with how you see the world. I thought that was actually really smart, I mean, because everybody sort of sees the world in a different way. So, but then it really moved very quickly away from that. It actually wasn't very irreverent. It wasn't like snarky. It did not live up to that promise, if that was a promise at all. It
Yeah.
turned out not to be snarky at all. It turned out to be a very normal, sort of left-leaning chatbot, right, in a really funny way, right? So anyway, so I didn't think much of it, but when I started using it because of Twitter, right? Like, I mean, or X, because it just has really up to the minute stuff. And I'm like, wow, if this actually works, this is going to be phenomenal. It'll give you, because Jaden, when you and I sort of do our research for this show, we're on, like, the Information and The Verge and TechCrunch, and just, we look at LinkedIn, we looked at X, we look at a lot of different things, but X is always so good. So to have Grok say, and if we're like, hey, let's do something on, this whatever subject or something like that, you can go on Grok, it'll give you not exactly up to the minute, but pretty good. But now it's built into each tweet. So all of a sudden, if I'm reading something and I don't really understand, like, oh, well, what do they mean by, vectors and blah, or just like something. And there's just like a little Grok button right there that you press, and it explains it instantly, which is a huge, huge feature. So I was like, boy, that's explaining it really well. So then I started just using it a little more. And I got to tell you that I did not expect this, but I like it for the same reason that you do, to a certain extent, which is it's not limiting. It doesn't put guardrails. And I'm a big guardrail guy, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
everybody needs
Yeah.
guardrails. But the truth is, because I work with
And I don't think
enterprise
that
a lot
has to be
now.
like a political thing. I don't think it has to be
Right,
super
right. I agree.
bipartisan. It's just like adults should be able to use the internet
That's it.
however you want
No,
to
no,
use
no,
the internet.
that's it. Right. But I imagine Jaden like out on a compound being like, guns for babies and stuff like that. Right. Whereas I'm like, no guns ever in the history. And everybody has to wear seatbelts, even if they're just walking. You know what I mean? Like, I sort of see the world like in that kind of a lens, which is a very boring and lame way to see it, I know. But I will say this, as powerful as Gemini is, and my colleague Robert Haslam, who does all our cheat sheets and everything like that on LinkedIn, if people are always wondering who does those, he's like our strategic genius and creative genius. He's been using Gemini a ton, right? Google's Gemini a ton. And I'm like, show me how you're using it. And he's showing me this wild stuff. And I know Gemini's very powerful, but when I go to Gemini and I ask anything that even smacks of something political, I'm just asking about like tariffs. It's like, well, I don't really want to get into that and everything like that. And Grok will be like, sure, yeah, you want to hack this? It's just like, it's just nice to be treated like an adult. So I'm kind of with you on that, Jaden.
Okay. So the thing that I really do like you mentioned, we have the ability. The first thing I started using Grok for was like when you go to like the trending news stories, it kind of has like, oh, these are the biggest ones. When you click on them, then it kind of has like a summary of the news story. That's what I first started using it for. I was like, okay, if I don't use Grok for anything else, that's quite a useful little thing.
Agreed.
Then you mentioned now they got the Grok summaries where it summarizes a tweet. This is great because there's a lot of tweets where I feel like they're like missing context. And I'm like, what the heck are they talking about? And it will break it down and explain it so you don't feel like you're like missing out on the inside joke or whatever. You understand what's going on. That's useful. It's got some really interesting new features that I was just testing out. One of them is like an image editor where you upload an image and it can kind of edit the image. I thought that was kind of funny. Another one that they just added over there is workspaces. So this is something that I talked to a lot of people that they love Claude for. So, I mean, I'll say I'm impressed by the fact that Grok will grab features that other people are doing. So OpenAI launches Memory 1 week ago. They just launched Memory today and it's great. It works fantastic. Claude has done workspaces. They just added this new workspaces. And for those that don't know what workspaces are, this is one thing I'm actually very bullish on Grok and excited about. But you can add a new workspace. So you could essentially, it's for a specific project. If I'm making a project that's all about, this podcast, I'm making AI applied workspace. And then I'm going to ask it a whole bunch of questions all about this AI applied podcast, how we can grow it better, what are good guests we should invite on, what are some good questions we should ask. And the cool thing is now it's kind of like Memory, but for a specific project. Everything, all of the context around this specific project, which is AI applied, is now going to live inside of here. And anything I tell it where I'm like, hey, I want to ask this guest some questions, give me some ideas, and it gives me ideas. And I'm like, okay, I hate any questions that are about, their early elementary school. I think that's ridiculous. We don't need to ask guests about their childhood, right? I don't know, whatever. Next time I ask it, like, hey, I have this new guest on, I'm going to ask it this. It's not going to ask me or give me any sort of responses about this one thing, because it knows the context of this conversation and the things that I like and my preferences around it. So do not sleep on workspaces. This is very cool. It shows you all of the attachments you've uploaded to a workspace and then all of the conversations. So the attachments is one thing I'm like particularly bullish on, where let's say it's AI applied and I upload, an Excel spreadsheet of all the analytics that Connor and I have had over the last year on the podcast. It's a giant spreadsheet. It's got all these analytics because somebody asked us to send over our analytics to see if we're good enough to put a new guest on the show. I upload that thing, and then I ask it like, hey, make me a graphic that explains this, or, break this down in a simple bullet point format, what all of these numbers mean. All of your attachments live here. And for the rest of eternity, when I come to this workspace, if I ever want to reference that specific attachment, it's all in here with all of that data.
Yeah.
So this is cool. Do you use this in any other sort of thing, like with ChatGPT or with Claude?
Yeah, I've used it from time to time, like in Claude, sort of, and I think OpenAI does this as well now. It can attach like Google Docs and stuff like that, which is absolutely awesome. Now, I have a lot of different types of work that I do at NYU, and then my own company, and then I have so it's sort of like hard to line those things up. But just for the normal user with one sort of like normal database, yeah, I think it's really, really cool. And I'm with you. I love that. I love that Grok sort of like does this as well. All right, we are, Jaeden, I'm going to give you the last word because I know that here we are at time. But last thoughts on Grok, because I'm kind of coming around.
All right. Well, I mean, overall, test it out. Whatever your preference is. If you feel like it answers great questions, I would say when you ask a question, if you have a couple extra seconds, I always like to click on think. It just pretty much tells Grok, use extra band. This is where I think I first fell in love with it, was because OpenAI has like 10 models you can drop down. You can go try to find like a high model, like GPT-4o high, and it's going to do high compute. You got to go select that model. I like that it's just right in the chat bar. I just click think, and I'm just like, look, I don't care what model you use. I don't care what you do. I mean, it's Grok 3 is the best model, but it's like, I don't care what you do. Put extra compute resources. This is a really important question. When I'm asking it, like, give me a couple ideas on this thing, and I don't always like click think. I don't care. But if I'm like, this is really important, you have to get this right, click the think button. It will take a couple extra seconds, and it will give you really good responses. Deep research, also do not sleep on deep research. If you want like I was getting it to help me come up with some podcast scripts recently for a new podcast project, but it was like a historical podcast. So I had to do these like historical deep dives. And I said deep research. It does like 5 times as long as a normal prompt. And it's citing these sources for all of this historical stuff. It's reading journals and papers and all this really interesting stuff. So deep research is also very good. Anyways, all in all, I'm a big fan. We'll see if they slip behind and someone runs ahead. I'm not going to shill them endlessly forever. As it stands, especially with the new memory feature they rolled out this week, I think it's the best. Hey, listen, if you have ever wanted to really level up your understanding of these AI tools, because Connor and I are on here talking about them all the time, the number one way I believe you can do this is if you get Connor's AI mindset course. He has an incredible course. Like, this is the man, the myth, and the legend, has been working at NYU Stern for like 10 years in education, and he really understands how to make mindset shifts and how to make behavioral changes around these AI tools. So if this is something that you're interested in, he has a phenomenal course. I don't think that there's a better one, if I'm being 100% honest, anywhere else. Check it out. We'll put a link in the description to this mindset course. It is incredible. You absolutely have to try it. But anyways, thanks so much for tuning into the podcast today. We hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day, and we will catch you next time.